Hello everyone. I haven't made any videos in a while because several of the videos that I made previously were shut down by YouTube for quote misinformation. And it was quite frustrating. I went round and round with them and I couldn't get anywhere with YouTube. And they just really wouldn't say exactly what the problem was, but just flagged it for quote misinformation. And it was pretty frustrating because I started this channel to fight misinformation and just go over primary scientific data about things. And that's what I was doing in those other videos, but it got flagged and they just wouldn't tell me what was wrong with it. And so I just didn't really want to make any videos. But I'm going to give it another try. And there's a couple of things that made me want to start making videos again because there's a couple of interesting studies that have come out in the past several weeks. And this is the first one I want to talk about. And it is a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine about the efficacy of a fourth dose of the Pfizer vaccine during the Omicron era. So we all remember when Omicron was going through, and pretty much everyone was exposed to Omicron. It was very contagious, and likely, half of the people were exposed to it, and probably a third of the people got Omicron in the United States. Um, and so is a country that has been pretty aggressive about the vaccination, and they were the first country to do a booster dose, and this is a fourth dose, which would be the second booster dose. They're using the same Pfizer vaccine against the original wild type virus, and they wanted to know how effective it was. So it was a pretty good study, large numbers. They extracted data on 1.2 million people, 60 years and older, and they started vaccinating those people in January. And what they did is they looked at the people who did not get the fourth dose, who only had 3 doses, and compared them to the people that had the fourth dose. And they also used people between that were within 7 days of getting the fourth dose as an internal control group, because they're basically the same people, and you wouldn't expect their immune system to have responded to a fourth dose within the first week. It usually takes about a week for the immune system to respond to some kind of challenge. So they use that as an internal control as well. So it's a very well-designed study and with large numbers. And what they found out is that there was protection against infection, but it was pretty short-lived. And then there was protection against severe disease, and that was longer-lived. But the data was quite small for the severe infection groups. So we'll go over those. In the methods, again, they're going over their study population, which is 60 years and older, and everyone in their study group had at least 3 doses, and so they're comparing 3 doses to 4 doses. So they're not comparing 4 doses to just the regular 2 dose or no dose. They're comparing 3 dose to 4 dose. So the 3 dose people are already fairly well protected. You have to keep that in mind. They define severe COVID-19 infection as a respiratory rate of greater than 30 breaths a minute, oxygen saturation of less than 94 while breathing ambient air. So, usually should be 99 or 98%, or a ratio of partial pressure of arterial oxygen to fraction of inspired oxygen of less than 300. All right. So there's a study design. There's a little little picture that shows that. So here's the thing. So they had 1.2 million people, 60 years or older, and then basically at the end, it was about a 50-50 split. 620,000 received the fourth dose, and 630,000 did not receive the fourth dose. And then what they did is they have this graph here. And this is kind of the take-home graph. If you look here, the ratio of 1 means that there's basically no difference between the third dose and the fourth dose. See, this is a ratio. See, adjusted rate ratio, 3 doses to 4 doses. So if a ratio of 1 means that there's no difference. So internal control, days 3 to 7, there's no difference. Then at week 3 and 4, they are twice as protected as a third dose. and then by the time and you see it decline, this is for infection. By the time it gets to week 8, there's no difference. So the whole protection only lasts about a month. The protection lasts from about here to about here. It's only about 4 weeks that protection lasts with a 4th dose, so it's not very long-lived. Severe infection, it looks like they had so few numbers that they couldn't calculate week 7 and week 8. And you can see these error bars are huge, which means the numbers were pretty small. But the trend is that for severe infection, you're about 3 times less likely to have severe infection with 4 doses than 3 doses. And it did not seem like it was trending down. They did, who knows? You don't know that if it was going to trend down in week 7 or week 8. They just didn't have enough data. And so that's pretty much the take-home point. If you look at this is the supplementary data. This is data that's not in the original paper, but they allow people to look at it if you're interested in that stuff. And so you'll see what the absolute numbers are. So the absolute numbers, as you can see, are mainly in the 80 plus group. And so this is a group of 600,000 people, and in this week, only 125 of them total had severe COVID-19. That's an extremely low rate in a very high-risk population. Over 60 is, the people that are going to have the most severe infection, though, the elderly. And the 80 plus are, they're quite old, and they're very likely to have severe disease. And out of 3,000 infections, only 76, that's only about 2%. Only 2% of them ended up having severe COVID-19. That says two things. One, the vaccination schedule was very effective. But because of that, the 4th dose doesn't give you by absolute numbers, very much protection. They didn't give the numbers of the third dose people, but if they're about half as much. So the 3rd dose people would have 120, like 140, 150. And so you had to vaccinate 600,000 people to keep about 70 people a week from getting severe illness in a 1-week period. So that's kind of up to public health officials and for people to decide whether that's worth it. I mean, if you look at pure stopping infection, getting a 4th dose to improve infections for a 4-week period does not seem worth it. Now, if severe disease continues to be well protected by a 4th dose, you can make an argument that may be worth it. The couple of downsides of a 4th dose are that these vaccines are not 100% without any risk. There's a tiny risk of things like myocarditis, although that's mostly in younger people. And there's a risk of bad reactions, myalgias, joint pain, and some of it can be longer lived than temporary. And there is a chance of what's called immune fatigue, where the immune system gets exposed to the same antigen over and over again, and it kind of gets tired of fighting it. So I think the U.S. has approved a 4th dose as well for the elderly and for people with immunocompromise. And people just need to decide based on this information whether they feel like a 4th dose is useful. But they're making that available. What I think would be more important now that the virus has mutated so far from the wild type would be to get a vaccine booster that includes a different type, such as Delta or Omicron, probably more likely. And that would give less immune fatigue because they're getting a slightly different antigen, and would give better protection for the type of variants that are running around in the wild now. So those are tests that are being done right now, and we'll talk about that in a separate video. So thanks for watching. Any comments? I welcome them below.